I'm Brian V, and this is Why We Work. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Ross Rebagliati. Ross is the 1998 Nagano Winter Olympic snowboarding champion from Canada. Now he has a new company, Ross's Gold, where he sells smoking accessories. Today, I want to find out from Ross, what is the pressure of being an Olympian, but also how valuable it has been to him to be true to his friends and family. Join me in my conversation today with Ross Rebagliati. I'm Brian V, and this is Why We Work. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Ross Rebagliati. Good day, fine sir.
Yes, it's good to be here, Brian. Thanks for having me.
You just corrected me on your name. I pronounced it in the introduction as Ross Rebagliati, and there's no AG sound, and
Yeah,
a lot of people got that wrong.
it's a tongue twister. Everybody gets it wrong, but it's wrong is the new right, so I'm good.
Well, as I said, you have Ross's Gold, so if people can remember you as that, they're a foot ahead of the pack. Ross, what industry are you in now, and what are you up to nowadays?
So officially, I'm part of the cannabis industry, but on the ancillary side. So we've come out with our growing products first. Nutrients, the Ross Gold Nutrients, is about to hit the shelves within a couple of weeks now. We're just finalized the packaging, and we're dealing with the printers right now. So that's amazing. It's been a long time coming. We've got pre-rolls coming from our licensed producers that will be supplying the dispensaries here in Canada, as cannabis is now a legal substance that can be consumed at a recreational or a medical level. And so we've got a host of other growing products like LED lights coming out by Alias, and we've got working with ProMix soil on the soil side of things, and then we're working with geneticists and laboratories to create proprietary Ross Gold strain that we can have our craft growers producing with our soil, with our lights, with our nutrients, and with our consulting on the growing, so we can get a consistent product. And I think, everybody wants to have that consistency when they buy their cannabis. They want it to be the same and get used to what branding is all about, and that's being there and supplying your customers what they're expecting. So we figure that's the best system, and so we've got the nutrients, the lights, the soil, the genetics, and we're putting together a package for our hand selected craft growers. And there's a lot of growers out there, but just like wine, you got to have that passion for the cannabis to really produce at that level. So yeah, it's an exciting business. And I think of course I've been part of the cannabis business officially since 1998, where when I was in Nagano, Japan, when I won the Olympics, and then inadvertently tested positive for THC, and was momentarily stripped of my medal, and then I was reinstated within a couple of days once they realized cannabis wasn't on their list of banned substances. I was reinstated. So it was at that juncture that I decided to embrace cannabis on a public level, even though prohibition was really a scary thing actually back then. And I did take a lot of flack for being out of the cannabis closet, and for being an athlete, and for being an Olympic gold medalist that was promoting a substance that was on Schedule 1, and it was a Schedule 1 substance, and it was purported as being a dangerous just something that society didn't need it. And I questioned that, and by the time I got to Nagano, I learned so much just from my own experience on how cannabis helped me as an athlete, helped me stay healthy, helped me not go out and party and drink, and you know, really gave me the opportunity to be the athlete that I wanted to be, even though I was growing up and living in a a ski resort party town where skiing wasn't always the priority. Cannabis helped me keep skiing or snowboarding at the time a priority in my life, and getting to the Olympics.
So
Um,
Ross, you mentioned to me before we started that people come up to you nowadays and they think of you as Ross's Gold.
yeah,
They don't. So I'd like to get to know a little bit more about you. But a moment ago, did I hear Canadian geese flying by? Did I hear
yeah,
is that what I just heard?
yeah. They're confused. I don't know. Some of them don't go south. They just stay here and fly around in a circle together all winter. But yeah, no, that was Canadian geese.
Most people have like these computerized backgrounds. You don't have to move your phone, but you have one of the most beautiful sceneries behind you. This is your front yard. You showed me a moment ago. You have a beach and lake, and you do your water skiing on there. Like
Yeah,
it's picturesque.
dude, it's epic. I'm telling you, we're in wine country here in the Okanagan, on the Naramata Bench. You can look it up, and it's really the epicenter of cottage country in Western Canada, really. So we're really fortunate to be here. I was just skiing this morning. The local resort here is called Apex Mountain, and it is steep and deep, my friend. And there was a blizzard up there. I just got down and was just like ripping down the mountain. I'm like, I got the interview with Brian,
On,
and
on a
and then here I
personal
am at the lake.
on a personal note, Ross, I have a friend in Nova Scotia, Canada, and I thought of this earlier to say, and I want to say his name is Christopher Swartz, and he is an avid snowboarder. But as you know, we have little mountains on the East Coast, but he loves to go out west as much as he can. Would you be able to give him a shout out? He loves Volkswagen Bugs and
Oh,
snowboarding. Like this is, and for his whole life, if you ever go on his Facebook, he just loves snowboarding. He's been an avid snowboarder for
oh,
couple
nice.
of decades. So could you give him a shout out?
Yeah, Brian. Right now, Brian Schwartz. What's up, brother?
Chris Swartz.
Chris.
Chris
Chris
Swartz.
Schwartz.
Yes.
There we go,
You have
Chris.
any tips
Buddy.
for him too?
Well, I'll tell you what. My line is you find your limits and start from there. So that was kind of my philosophy growing up. I think it's all about willpower, and if you're out there, equipment's important and everything, hands in front, all but really it's all about passion and expressing yourself, and not worrying about anything other than what you're doing, and being in the moment. It's a zen thing to be up on the hill, whether you're skiing or snowboarding. And on the Volkswagen side of things, Chris Schwartz, I have a sick R32, and it's jacked, so you can look that up. That's a Volkswagen as well. But yeah, I'll look you up on Facebook and we'll connect.
Yeah, I'll see if maybe he'll go out west and you guys could hit the trails together.
That'd be sweet.
Good. Ross,
Absolutely.
getting people to know who you are, it's been a little while since the Olympics. Did you work as a kid before getting into snowboarding? Is there something that you did as a teenager, pre-teenager, just something to make some money?
Oh yeah, I had lots of jobs.
What was your
Um,
first job?
I was a paper boy
Nice.
for about 6 or 7 years. Did the morning paper, six
How
days
old
a week,
how
and
old were you?
I guess I started when I was around 10, and I did it. Um, I probably did it for about 4 or 5 years, and
Nice.
I had to have it done by 6:30 in the morning, and then I
Yeah.
would go to school after that. So it was a little, one of those. That was my first job, and then I worked up north in my dad's mining camps actually as a teenager, and spent a lot of summers, even as young as grade 1. I was in northern Saskatchewan exploring for uranium back in the 70s. 1978 was my first mining camp experience as a little guy. And then I started working in these camps when I was 17, 18. And that's right around when I started taking snowboarding seriously. And then I was hired on as a coach after that to coach summer camps for Craig Kelly and his summer camps at Blackcomb, Whistler Blackcomb.
How old were you when you won the gold? So when did you start making money in snowboarding to the point where you thought this could be a career?
So when I was 15, I started snowboarding, and when I was 16, I was sponsored by 3 or 4 different companies. Burton Snowboards. I already had ski racing. I wasn't getting any free equipment. We were paying for everything. And then as soon as I started, because I ski raced until I was 15, and then I found snowboarding and gave up ski racing, much to my dad's, chagrin,
Yeah.
and gave it up and started snowboarding. And then by the next year, I was sponsored and competing. I was sponsored by Burton Snowboards, Oakley Sunglasses, and I don't know, some other
So as you
snowboard
were
sponsors.
sponsored and getting some money in, and then right up until the Olympics and after the Olympics, did you work at anything else, or was it strictly in snowboarding or, in winter sports?
Yeah, I was able to just actually no. What I did when I was 19 was I bought a house in Whistler when I was 19, and that was in 1990. And I had snowboard sponsors at the time, and I had a bunch of prize money that I used for the down payment. Maybe it was 91 actually, and I used the prize money for my down payment. And the house in Whistler was only 200 grand, but at the time you could buy houses for $10,000 in Saskatoon. And so to buy one house, I could buy a whole block for the same price in Saskatoon. But I went for it anyways.
Why
And
did you go for it, Ross, at 19, buying a $200,000 house? I mean, that's 1991, right?
yeah, that
That's a
was
fortune.
expensive. Yeah, it was a fortune. But it dawned on me that because I was living at our family's condominium in Whistler at the time, and I wanted to branch out on my own,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to be paying rent to somebody else's mortgage. I figured that out even before I started
Yeah.
renting as a teenager, and I was looking through the newspaper, and I looked at this ad for this cool Gothic arch in the woods. It was amazing, and it was 200 grand, and I put $10,000 down. At the time, banks were just giving money away, like you couldn't
Mm-hmm.
go wrong. And what happened was later that year, I lost one of my sponsors, and so I panicked, being young, and I sold the house in Whistler, and it sold for like 50 or $60,000 more than I was asking for it. And there was a bidding war on it, and I made 200 grand in less than a year. It doubled that year. And the light bulb went off in my head, and so I took the money, and instead of $10,000, I put down $200,000 on the next house. And then by the time the Olympics came, I had already flipped like a half a dozen
Nice.
houses
Nice.
in Whistler, and was kind of paying for my snowboarding. But it wasn't really a job, right? I
Yeah.
just signed, and then I lived in the house and I rented out rooms. I eventually started doing my own renovations, and my last house in Whistler is like an epic. It was 7,000 square feet, post and beam. It had like there was 5 levels on it. There was 3 suites. Like it was unreal, right? Plus the living house, like the living space in the main house was over 2,000 square feet, and then there was 3 suites and a giant basement.
Do you still
And so yeah,
have some of that property or other properties besides your home now? Do you still dabble in real estate?
Yeah, we actually have a, a Airbnb right now that we rent out in Kelowna, and it's beauty, right? It has I put an artificial golf green in the front yard. It's less than 5 minutes from a really nice golf course called I think it's Bear Mountain, and then
Do you have a
it's just
website for that? Do you have a site for that, or how can people get in contact with that? I'm not familiar. I know Airbnb, but I've never adventured in one.
right now. You can just DM me on Instagram or Facebook, Ross Rebagliati 98, and we're literally putting the code lock on it like this week
Hmm.
and listing it. So it's brand new. As you can see, we're on the lake. We just moved here like a month ago, um, and this is a family property that our
Yeah.
family has had in for decades now, and it sits empty pretty much in the winters. So we've, because of the situation, the COVID and everything, we decided to get crafty and sort of maximize, because we don't really know, what the future holds. There could be like some variance, throwing a wrench into everybody's plans. So
Hmm.
we figured that we would move into the cottage, Airbnb the house, and what I do for a living as far as my nutrients and the whole raw school stuff is remote. Like, I don't need to be in a office or anything like that. So I'm flexible like that.
So as you were buying houses, flipping things, making money as even a teenagers, and then your 20s, you win the gold medal, the height of your career. What was the trickle effect after, say, the hoo la la, the celebrity of you? When did you, or did you, but I think you always were, down to earth and ready to work again? And when did that occur for you?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, for a long time, I was too proud to work. Like Ross Rebliati can't just get a normal job anymore.
Hmm.
And I was down to earth, but those experiences where you have, say, 7 or 8 thousand people jamming the Eaton Center, or you got a whole entire international airport full of fans and screaming girls wearing wedding dresses, and um, you know, smoking joints with Keith Richards right before he goes on stage with Mick Jagger, or you know, hanging out with Dan Aykroyd and the Roots guys in Toronto, meeting supermodels and race car drivers and famous boxers, and like, kind of as down to earth as anyone can be.
It still
Uh,
lift you up a bit.
it's part of what happens. It's like medicine. If you take a certain medicine, you're going to feel like this, and that is a certain kind of medicine that people deal with in different ways. I'll tell you that, and I can relate to the people that have a struggle with that sort of a lifestyle, and being recognized not only by name but visually, and not even within your industry. Like, I was comfortable in 1990. I was on the cover of Transworld Snowboard magazine, and and that started off my snowboard career, and I was a known person within the snowboard community. And I'd go to Europe, and if I was skiing or snowboarding at these World Cups, Europeans would know who I was just by looking at me. But outside snowboarding, I was just a regular guy.
Hmm.
But this kind of elevated me into the more mainstream. And then, because of my advocacy for cannabis since 98, and then helping Canada bring it into a federally legal program here in Canada, as one of the people who put their neck out during Prohibition. I had a store and clothing line, and we had glass and everything. Like, I launched my glass when Tommy Chong just got out of jail for having glass. So it wasn't
Is
no
that the
small
reason? I
thing.
saw him on an interview yesterday. What was the specific reason he went to jail?
Yeah, when he did that 70s show, he was in jail. He was allowed out to do the show, and he was in jail for his son having a line of glass called Tommy Chong glass.
What? So
And
you mean like a bong or something? Glass bong, or what do you mean by glass?
correct, like a line of glass cannabis smoking paraphernalia.
That's why he went to jail.
Yeah, and so he took the rap for his son because it was his name on
Yeah.
the glass. And that was just like a nice little niche thing that his son, and I taught his son how to snowboard, by the way, in that early snowboard camp back in 88, 89. But
So you start developing all these products as well after 98. Were you specifically staying in cannabis, but did you get another sort of job, like, I don't know, filling gas tanks in cars or the gas station? Did you do anything outside, or did you stay pretty focused?
no, man, I built houses.
Good.
And I'll tell you, I guess it was around 10 years ago. And so it's been around 23 years since the Olympics, and it took me 10 years to really get my head grounded again, where I would go back to work. And I did. I started working in Whistler at the time as an operator. I was operating excavator and skid steer, putting in service lines and building new neighborhoods in Whistler. And then after we finished servicing the whole entire neighborhood, I got onto a carpentry crew and started building the houses. And I did that for some time until I had a at I was dealing with a custody issue with my previous wife at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
we had to move from Whistler, and that's why I sold my house there, so that I could have 50-50 custody of my son. And so we moved from Whistler to here, where I grew up anyways, but I mostly just spent the summers here. So it was no big stretch for me to come here. I miss Whistler, yes, but this place is epic, let me tell you. It's crazy. Lots of elbow room for me,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. But yeah, so that's when my job ended in Whistler building houses. But before that, I built my own house, like that 7,000 square foot post and beam. Like I built that. I took
Where
it over actually
where did
from
you get
another
these
guy.
skills? I mean, you worked with your dad in the mines, but because you mentioned even doing your own renovations at 19,
Yeah.
where did those skills come from?
Just diving into it, basically. Like the first thing I had to do was that first house that I bought, I eventually had it rented out as well. And first thing I had to do with that is change the wax seal on the toilet. And I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
there's one bolt and there's another bolt. I'll take that off and see what happens, right? And that's how you learn. And I was doing it for myself as well, so I didn't have a boss like looking over my shoulder, giving me a hard time or helping me, one or the other. And but over time, I acquired enough skills just doing my own stuff that I was, as a laborer, you can just get on any crew even if you don't know anything. And if you stay long enough, eventually they'll teach you. And next thing you know, you've got a gun in your hand and wearing a tool belt. And that's the same thing that happened to me. Like right now, right out front of my house, I could show you right now. I have a 16-foot tool trailer with $10,000 worth of tools in it. And I was at this time last year, I was working framing houses in the Okanagan, right here on the lake. I framed 2 houses on the lake here last winter, and another 2 houses up on the mountain. And then we were building a giant foundation slab for a huge tilt-up steel warehouse when COVID came last March. And I was working on that site. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. and I'd be at work by 6 a.m. in the dark and make my breakfast in my trailer and get to work. But there was 20 guys sharing one, you know, porta potty, right?
Yeah.
And I was listening to my headphones. I listened to the news constantly, and I was following what was going on with the pandemic in China. And I'm like, bro, like they're not calling it a pandemic yet. I couldn't believe it. And then I walked off the job on like March 3rd. I told my boss, I'm like, bro, I don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And March 4th was the lockdown. And I called it a day before. I would have called it even earlier if I would have had the scientists like, anyways.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'm here in Korea, and it first kind of rushed to Korea. And my dear wife was like, this is a problem. I'm like, it's gonna be all right. I don't know what it is, but it'll be fine. But she's, no, 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 get our masks
Yeah,
on.
that's it, right? And yeah, I'm a big believer in science and masks and the whole um, strategy behind what we need to do. So it's
Ross,
it's amazing.
thinking of all these jobs that you've had, and I just keep thinking you're a hard worker, and it shows. And I'm glad that you did those jobs. And I have an uncle who was framing houses, and I would help once in a while, or just be a gopher more or less. But hard working job, especially in your
Yeah,
more up north, so it's colder. I mean, Nova Scotia is not Florida, but
yeah,
this
it's cold in
is
Nova Scotia.
cold, warming up the hands. You got the nail gun out, you're pulling nails,
Oh yeah,
whatever you're doing.
yep,
Do you
yep,
have, and I wonder, being on the site with some of these guys, do you have a pressure of being an Olympian? One, like
yeah,
kind of keeping yourself in shape, but also just, I was an Olympian. And I think part of what you said before in an interview with someone else is that you kind of had like not a cocky, but attitude towards the reporters after you were done and saying, I don't care about what people think. But there's also a pressure that people do think this stuff and they're working around you. And so is there a pressure? I interviewed Christina Smith, who is the pioneer. I don't know if you know who she is, of the Canadian bobsled women's bobsled
okay,
team, one of the first people to go in it. And she mentioned, there is a pressure for her to stay in fit and, just have a little,
yeah,
watch what's going on. What about for you?
100%. Yeah, I feel a lot of pressure uh, to stay in shape. I'm in wicked shape right now. um, if I took my jacket and my shirt off, you'd think I was an MMA fighter. But just being on the job as an Olympian too. Like I play a game with people too. Like I love not telling people who I am, but they recognize me, but they don't know why. And a lot of these guys I work with on carpentry crews are in their 20s, and they were like babies when I was at the Olympics. And so they've seen me enough over their lifetime and heard the name enough from their parents or whatever, that they recognize me but can't just place it. And so I let that go on for as long as I can. I find it hilarious when they do realize who I am. Um, but then after the cat's out of the bag, there's kind of more pressure because it's kind of like, well, why are you on our crew? All of a sudden, that's the question. Why aren't you a millionaire? Why are you doing this for, $20 an hour when da 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 da? And the answer is because for one thing, I like it. Secondly, I can do it. Um, Third, I'm trying to do something that costs money, as far as start my own company, start my own business, create something out of nothing, packaging, paying graphic design artists, doing white label deals, like all that. What I'm trying to do costs money, and I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to do what I'm doing, of my own money and of investors' money. And there are times when it comes down to the point where you got to strap the tool belt on, and I call the tool belt the money maker. So you strap the money maker back on once in a while, and you pull some hours, and that's just the way I was brought up. And I love going to work. I love building houses. It's
But
awesome. I hate screwing up, and that's just part of anything, right? The pressure to be an Olympian, though, on top of that performance, like you got to be 3 stories up, tied off, with fall lines, and you're like hanging over, trying to nail gun like the joists and the whole. I mean, it's crazy work, right? But on top of that, being somebody that is in the media, like then I'll be off work one day because I'm going to be on TV and I have to go to Vancouver to a studio, and then I come back, like, where were you? I was like, I was on TV, whatever, right? Like, it's such a weird
oh, Ross, you
dichotomy,
got to
right?
go do your TV show.
Yeah.
Start razzing, yeah. But does
Yeah,
that work in against you too? That if one, what they're saying or what they're thinking, like, oh, Ross, why are you doing this? Do you start to think, yeah, why am I doing this? Why aren't I?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. How come I'm not a millionaire? I don't know. Why am I building houses? It's hard work. Like,
Mhm.
when you got a lift of plywood, you got 100 sheets of plywood, each one weighs around 60 pounds. You got to carry all of them to the roof. It's like, holy
You
shit.
question yourself every trip.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, yeah,
backbreaking, right?
yeah.
And then when you're like lifting up each whole sheet over your head to the next guy like 100 times in a row. But at the end of the day, there's camaraderie and there's like a whole sense of belonging and accomplishment when you see, like, we're building nice houses on the lake, man, like multi-million-dollar palaces. And I'm so proud to say, like, some of the houses that I've been a part of, to see them standing there. And I've even left some gems in Whistler that I worked on, that I go by every time I go to Whistler, just to see how they look and how people are taking care of them. So um, same in sports, like to win the gold medal, and that it resonates over time. It definitely, it's like a fine, I don't drink anymore, but it's going to use the analogy of a fine wine. Like, it just
Mhm.
gets better over time. And winning and losing and going to jail in Japan and getting out of jail and getting my medal back all within 3 days, um, was traumatic for me. And I had PTSD for a good 10 years after that, where I didn't work and I didn't get my mail and I didn't pay my taxes. And I got audited by the Canadian government because the newspaper said I made $10 million, or expected that I made $10 million.
Mhm.
And, I'm getting audited and I'm like depressed, and they're like, where's the money? I'm like literally living in my camper. I bought a big piece of property. One of my last big moves in Whistler was I bought this piece of property on Green Lake. Whistler and Blackcomb reflected out onto the lake right in front of my property. It was 33,000 square feet. And I had the zoning to build a boutique hotel. And I had the Roots guys going to be Ross's Roots Lodge. And at the time, I don't know, the Whistler municipality changed my zoning when I presented my building plans at the town meeting or whatever. And they changed my zoning. And that just sent me in, because all of a sudden I was carrying this huge property. And then 9/11 happened right when I was about
Mhm.
to sell it to this guy in Washington, millionaire Microsoft guy. And he got wiped out by 9/11 and the stock market crashing. And then I had this huge overhead, $15,000 a month, and just crushing, like, as a 29, 30-year-old, to deal with that amount of pressure. I eventually sold the property for double what I paid for it, and was successful in paying off my debts. But I lived in the camper for 2 years while I was trying to get that financing to happen to build the hotel. And it's just a learning experience. And if I would have known better, I would have taken the guy's $250,000 deposit and told him where he could go.
Mhm.
And instead I tried working with the guy and carrying my debt longer so that he could buy my property from me. And those are just some mistakes that you make in life, and in business is cutthroat as well. And I've been involved with the Ross Gold brand now for 8 years, and we're just launching. I was 6 years prior to legalization when we started Ross Gold, and we knew that it was going in the direction of legalization, but we had no crystal ball, and we didn't. There was a lot of stores already open, and I felt like I was behind the ball. um, you know, I was put on the no-fly list also at 9/11. And um, I think when my daughter was born 8 years ago, and my wife and I tried to travel down to California from Whistler, where my mom lives, in the winter, and they turned me around, because of just being associated to cannabis at the Olympics. Um, that was pretty heartbreaking, because I had the baby in the car and the dog and my wife, and it was
Ah.
a planned trip, and it's a few hours from Whistler just to get to the border. And that was really the deciding factor. And okay, you know what? I've lost everything that I would normally try to protect as far as coming out of the cannabis closet, and I'm not allowed to travel anymore. I'm losing opportunities corporately because of my association to cannabis. I'm done trying to be that guy. Olympian, that perfect Canadian, whatever that is. And I decided that I was going to go with my passion. And I was already an advocate for cannabis and doing lots of interviews about why athletes like Michael Phelps would choose. Like, I was the guy that went on NBC to fight for Michael Phelps. And then there was the guy that was on NBC to say, you know, the opposite, like why cannabis is bad for you. So like, I've been doing this for sticking my neck out on the line for other people and for the industry in general for decades, 2 decades. But this is when I decided to put my name on it, when I finally got turned around again. And after being put on the no-fly list in 2001, and nobody said nothing, it was in the newspapers that I was on the no-fly list. So there was just a lot of challenges, you know, around my life and what I wanted to do. And, you know, the hand that was dealt in Nagano was something that I embraced, but I didn't necessarily want to put my name on it formally because prohibition. I wanted to be an advocate, but I didn't want to be like illegally profiting financially from cannabis at the time, because I still wanted to be legit and not end up, you know, in jail like so many people were. Families were being ripped apart, kids were being taken away from their parents and so forth. And it was no small thing that what I was embarking on at the time. And so that was 8 years ago. And we're still launching the first product now after 8 years. Actually, that's not true. We did have the line of glass. I was successful in opening a store during Prohibition, and I was literally like, come and get me. You know, I was fed up and I needed to support my family. I couldn't work in the corporate world because of my association to cannabis. And building houses is great, but that's not what my aspiration in life was. It's fun. I love it. But like, for me, cannabis is like snowboarding or skiing. It's like an extreme sport. You know, I love growing it. I'm recognized now pretty internationally. Like, I've got some fans around the world that follow my growing techniques and how I grow cannabis, and in particular my outdoor. If you look on my Instagram account, you can go back and look at my last 3 years of outdoor. And it's really a magical journey that I like to share with other people, and you know, my techniques and what I do to create the you know, the cannabis that I do. And
Ross, the thing about you that I enjoyed the most, you know, being a fan, someone watching growing up, knowing who you were, is the quote of you saying, as I mentioned a moment ago, of not caring about what people think about your friends, and that's what you stuck to at that time. And as I said, you mentioned you're maybe a little bit too confident with your answer, but I think the core of the answer was how much you valued your friends and your family. How has that, if at all, changed, or how much have you even hammered down on the idea of staying true to your family and your friends, and how important that is for listeners?
yeah, I mean, at the time I didn't have a family, so my friends were my family. My friends helped me learn about life and how, you know, about snowboarding, and about, you know, snowboarding can be a lifestyle. Like, these guys looked at snowboarding as a legit, or skiing as a legit way of life. And that's coming from Vancouver. I didn't have people around me that thought that way. You know, they were known as ski bums. And these guys were like no ski bums. Like, they were pro mountain bike racers, pro road bikers. That was their off season, was staying in shape by doing backcountry touring and that sort of thing. And yeah, sorry, what was the main question on that one?
How have you grown in valuing your family and
Right, my
friends
friends and
more,
stuff.
and
Right.
understanding how what you said then is still applicable
Yeah.
today?
So, like I was saying, I had no family at the time, like no wife or kids and stuff, and so that was really important to me. That you know, I stuck behind my friends, and over time, you know, it's been 20 years. I don't have the same friends
Yep.
anymore. You know, and I have 3 kids, and been married to my beautiful wife Ali for 10 years, and you know, we're super happy together, and um, the whole 9 yards. And it's number one. And I mean, the priority for me now is my family, and you know, there's nothing else precedes that. It's that's family first. And so it's tough on that end to do what I'm doing as far as trying to create a brand in an industry that is got companies with billion-dollar market caps. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
up against the big boys. It's no joke. We've got Budweiser, we've got the alcohol, tobacco companies, we've got the tech companies, we've got all kind of people with deep pockets getting involved. And as soon as you get a license, you got people breathing down your neck to sell it to them. And it's cutthroat out there. And I'm trying to do it, bootstrap style, So it's taken me longer. I can't just throw down like $10 million. I just don't have that power. But what I do have is brand traction, and I
Mm-hmm.
have support by the people. And so I know that they're cringing the closer I get to bringing any product, because I had all this stuff during Prohibition, but it's changed.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And I've had to reboot, and this is Ross Gold 2.0. And the whole process is completely different. And the path of least resistance for me was the growing, because I have a license, I'm allowed to grow. I can show people my techniques and the results of those techniques. I can get my own nutrients and my own LED lights, and work with the biggest soil company in the world, and create a system that creates a consistent product at a super high level. And it's magical. It's so much fun. But at the same time, that's the path of least resistance. No licenses required. I can get my growing equipment into practically any country in the world. Um, it's just an unbelievable. Like the nutrients company that I'm working with is in 35 countries. Right? Like during the gold rush, everybody knows what was the most profitable, and it wasn't the gold, it was the picks and shovels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of my angle, and the lesson that I've learned from history. My dad being in the gold industry for his whole life as an exploration geologist. Um, that
It's
was something that we learned ages ago.
it's good too for you knowing that you are a hard worker, that you don't necessarily have to rely on this business wholeheartedly. Therefore, you're able to step back and look at it from different perspectives so that you can allow it to grow rather than rely, I need this. 'Cause you have other skills and talents that you can use, but it give
Mhm.
rather than being you're all in, but it's not 100% absolutely necessary, do or die. So you have a different perspective, which can allow your company to flourish.
Yeah, I get a different perspective also from the people I'm around.
Mhm.
Um, if I was just in the corporate world trying to launch a brand and go public and just try to drive the market cap up, I'm not hearing from the people at that point. I don't know
Yeah.
what the pulse is anymore. But when I'm building houses, I'm literally working with the guys that are going to be buying my weed.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I know what they want, right?
Yeah.
They want rolling papers with a hammer on it to represent the builders. And I'm
Yeah.
going to have rolling papers with a hammer on it. And I'm going to have a lighter that has a hammer on it. And
1999, Ross, I had in Acadia University a communications course, and my presentation, my first one was on Alexander Keats. Those who like it a lot. I was scared,
yeah,
completely scared to do a presentation in front of 40 people. My second one was legalize it, don't criticize it. I played Bob Marley in the background and handed out zigzag papers to everyone in the class. This is in
that's awesome. When was that?
in like 1998,
No way.
1999. Yeah.
That's
It was,
hilarious.
it's pretty funny how, and what you would think too is how things have changed, right? To the
Mhm.
point where you came on the scene as this person who did this thing to now how Canada is and the United States, as you mentioned, getting turned away from California, uh, how things have changed completely.
Amazing. Big turnaround. Back then, like not even half the states allowed cannabis, just statewide as they do today. Legalized completely at a federal level in Canada, which is it's the first G8 country to do that. Um, And the talk, and I've heard a lot of people say that and credit me for bringing the conversation up at the dinner table or at the
Mhm.
kitchen table, um, 23 years ago, but it's stayed persistent. And one of the interesting parts was when I had my Ross Bold store in Kelowna in 2017, how many seniors were coming in. And it was a beautiful store. Like, it looked like a really nice jewelry shop,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
you know it was really nice to be in. And anyways, they were the most um curious than anybody else. Like, you would think, oh, the 40, 50-year-old guys,
Mhm.
maybe start thinking maybe they should smoke some weed and see if that, or whatever. But it was actually the seniors. So I mean, it's changed the conversation. Even on the side where you would think the most amount of stigma would lay with the seniors, because they were brought up with the war against
60s.
drugs,
Yeah. Yeah.
big pharma, and the whole, like, you have to take a pill or it's not real. But the thing is, they've been down the road. They know that it was
Mhm.
fake. They know they got duped, and that prohibition was a farce, and it was only a political play at the time, for many reasons, but all politically motivated. Um, and
Ross,
so,
thinking of listeners, do you have advice, knowing that you were a paper boy, that you're a hard worker now, you do some different jobs when you need to, but also having your own business? Do you have advice for people getting into work one way or the other?
yeah, don't let fear be a deciding factor for you. Um, I think the thing that you want to do least is the thing you should do most. Um, I think the fear of learning a new skill, it keeps people, um, this suppressing feeling for people to, like, retrain or to rethink their life. And I think, for me, I've had to rethink my life and retrain and do that multiple times, as an athlete, as a person, as a father, as a husband. Um, and there's nothing that's more helpful for you, I think, to be able to morph into a different situation, and to be flexible and not be within the box, and to try to expand, what you're able to do. And for me, it's been the sports that keeps me confident enough to feel that way. And so it's kind of a, one of those things where I get the endorphins from cycling, from running, from skiing, from my kids, that gives me the motivation to, feel like the confidence that I could go onto a job site and work on a multi-million-dollar house, or to start a nutrients company and work with licensed producers and try to be part of the cannabis industry. um, to me, like, the idea of being a sponsored snowboarder and going to the Olympics was a pipe dream, because in 1987, I wasn't allowed to snowboard in any ski resort in Canada. Snowboarding didn't exist yet. And 10 years later, I was winning the Olympics for snowboarding. And I was a ski racer. So
Mhm.
even at a young age, I decided to change things up. And um, of course, the ski racing was a huge benefit to me as a snowboard racer. And I didn't start off snowboard racing because they didn't even have race boards when I started snowboarding. But I was in the freestyle scene. But being able to see the opportunities as a freestyler, but on the racing side, that I was like, oh man, I could win races probably easier than I can win a half pipe contest, because I just have to go against the clock.
Mm.
And that's when my ski racing kicked in. So all these skills that I have now, like, I was just building houses last year again. Then I had those skills from years ago, from when I was living in Whistler. So, before I was building houses, I had the whole store going in Kelowna and during Prohibition, and was earning a living that way, with the glass line as well. And then during the end of Prohibition and the beginning of this new legal era, that all shut down for me. But I was able to rely on my carpentry, and continue feeding my family and putting food on the table and getting, keeping my kids in ski racing. And, it's expensive to live in Canada and to do all that stuff that I want my kids to do, because
Yeah.
that's, my life, right? So yeah, that's what I can say to people starting out, or and even other people that are in industries. Like, for example, there's a lot of guys that were in the oil industry that don't have a job anymore,
Hmm.
and they have to retrain and figure out what to do next. And it's no small feat. No one's there to help you. No one cares about you. You're the only one on earth. I mean, that's really, you have to pick yourself up on your own. And I can tell you from my own experience that I've been as low as you can get and still be alive, and been able to rebound from that. And it's because of the diversity, I guess you could say, that has given me the opportunities that I have now.
You mentioned how big companies are getting into cannabis. What is your take on character in cannabis and the
Well,
idea
so
of
far,
maybe what people are producing, how they're going about doing it? I mean, there's probably a lot of wrinkles that need to get ironed out with what Canada, the government's doing with things, but where do you see character in this?
well, that character and passion kind of go hand in hand, right? So right now, because of the corporate nature of the cannabis industry being, a publicly traded commodity now, there's not a lot of cannabis character. It's mostly like corporate minded people that aren't cannabis people that see an opportunity, financially. And it's just a play with cannabis as if it was a play for suntan lotion or Tesla or anything else. It just
Mhm.
happens to be cannabis. So that's affected actually the industry a lot, and disrespected the industry that got us to where we are today, that fought during prohibition to end prohibition. um, and so there's been a lot of those big companies kind of rethinking how they're trying to approach uh, the retail end of it and connecting with their consumers, where before they were simply trying to drive the price share up and have a huge market cap and do a whole bunch of acquisitions and create value for shareholders, and not think about their products, not think about their consumers. And that's been lacking in the industry. Now things have changed a little bit, and you're allowed to have these smaller craft grows that are, small production and high end. You can't grow high end cannabis on a grand scale. Okay, it has to be, within 2,000 square feet. That's the biggest you can go and still get quality. Um, so farm gate sales is another thing where you can have your production facility with a little outlet store, and that's kind of like wine tours where you can go and do wine tastings and buy wine directly from the vineyard.
Mhm.
So they've allowed that now in Canada. And the next thing that's coming down the line, that before you weren't allowed to produce your own weed and direct it to your own dispensaries. In fact, you weren't even allowed to own a production facility and a dispensary. You had to be a Chinese wall, and excuse my my
Mhm. Yeah, a
terminology.
big wall. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and you had to have like a separation, and so they've changed that too, and they're opening it up because they're realizing the safety of cannabis doesn't require, the numbers just aren't showing that there's like a huge danger or
Mhm.
concern for public safety or public health
Was
with
that
regards
for
to cannabis.
regulation in between? Is that the
Yeah.
idea to get? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was to control it because they weren't, like, the politicians aren't cannabis people. They didn't know from experience that cannabis is a safe product. So they had to learn from statistics and um, that sort of thing. So we've got the stats that prove there weren't more car accidents. There's actually
Mhm.
nobody dying from cannabis. It's actually very safe. You definitely don't want to take too much. Everybody knows that, but you're not going to die from it or wake up with a huge hangover. Um, but you know, now that those numbers are out, they're relaxing who can grow it. They actually want to get the black market licensed and get them into like real facilities because they understand, like, it was just
a bad decision that was made 80 years ago, but it never stopped the production of cannabis, and it just became more popular, actually. And these growers are worth their weight in gold. I mean, can you imagine sommeliers growing for the last 80 years under prohibition that grow wine, that all of a sudden, oh, you're not going to hire those guys when wine goes legal, right? Like those are we call them legacy growers. I'm a legacy grower. If you have a craft grow, you have a license and you need a grower, you don't want a guy who's 20. You need a guy who's 40 years old that been growing for 20 years. That's who you want. And that's the same when you have a vineyard. You want that sommelier to have decades of experience, you know, if you're a top brand. It's the same thing with cannabis. It's very finite techniques, and there are lots of ways to go wrong.
Yeah. And I think with Ross's Gold, you're putting character at the top, just knowing what you've gone through and your work ethic.
Thank you. Well, you know, we definitely try to, you know, walk the walk and talk the talk, and it's, you know, it's usually either one or the other, right? And so I've sacrificed, probably I could have gotten started by now, but wouldn't have had control over the company, and
what's your goal? What's your goal for Ross's Gold? Maybe an overarching goal, but maybe something that you see in the horizon.
Well, I see the whole thing, right? I see having all the equipment that you need to grow it, all the nutrients, everything that you need to grow cannabis. And then on the other side, I see, well, brick and mortar was a bigger thing until the virus came, but the grand plan was to have franchise brick and mortar dispensaries plus an online store with delivery, with every kind of cannabis product you can have. And it's basically like Ross Gold World. Like I want to have eventually, like you're not allowed to have grow equipment and cannabis products in the same store right now. They don't allow that. But what I would like to see is a store where you can have the whole growing section, you can have the whole connoisseur cannabis part, you know, and then you can have consultants in there that can help you, you know, fine tune your selections, and just have like everything under one roof, one-stop shop. So you go in there, yeah, you're gonna buy some pre-rolls, you might buy a little bit of weed, but if you smoke weed like me, you can't afford to buy weed. Like I probably go through a pound of weed a month, and that's at a store. You're looking at this is my dog.
Oh, great. I miss bigger dogs. Here in Korea, they have all these little lap dogs that.
Oh yeah.
Hey puppy.
This is Bella. She's a Corso. A Canna Corso, but she's only 6 months, so she's a young guy.
What kind of dog? What kind of
dog? Canna Corso.
Canna Corso.
So it's a Mastiff.
Oh, okay. Look like a lab, a chocolate lab or something.
Yeah, they usually have cropped ears that are pointy, and I'm not a believer of that. So she looks like a big lab, but Corsos are one of the bigger dog breeds.
So you plan on having Ross's Gold around the world, for instance, wherever it's legal?
Yeah, I got a big following in Europe, and all of our partners are GMP certified, which means we can operate in Europe. I actually have an Italian passport, so I can even work in any country in Europe as well. So, you know, I lived in Italy at the end of my career and spent almost 10 years on the World Cup tour there.
Ross, knowing your goal, what is something that maybe people don't understand about your industry that you would like them to understand?
Probably that cannabis is actually part of a healthy lifestyle. I think that's the number one thing. Your body actually has one of its biggest sensory, I think it's the biggest or the second biggest sensory organism that you have in your body is called the endocannabinoid system. And since prohibition, people have been cannabinoid deficient. That's like being deficient in vitamin B12 or vitamin D. Like it leads to depression, it leads to anxiety. And I think Big Pharma knew about this from the beginning, and that's why they're producing all these anxiety and depression drugs, is because of prohibition of cannabis. cannabis was legal for thousands of years prior to 80 years ago. In some countries, cannabis was a staple diet, like in India, that they would feed kids different cannabis extracts and foods that were infused with cannabis for colicky kids that were crying a lot, and use it for all. I mean, before Prohibition, cannabis was the base medicine in every medicine. It was like the one thing that was in everything, and then you would add your herbs and other medicinal things into it. But before Prohibition and before Big Pharma, almost everything had cannabis in it on a medicinal level for people. We've been lied to, and the propaganda spread around the world because of the United States being the leader of the world, and having cannabis on the scheduled as a Scheduled I substance. There was a lot of racial motivation behind it. There was a lot of corporate motivation, like DuPont at the time was vying to create synthetic sails, when at the time shipping industry was done with sailboats with hemp sails and ropes, and DuPont came up with synthetic sails and ropes, and they, along with a bunch of other industries, lobbied the US government to make cannabis illegal, so that they could corner the rope and sail industry. Henry Ford was powering the Model T Ford with cannabis oil before the explosion of oil. And they had thousands of hectares of hemp growing to create oil to power the Model T Ford before the oil industry started. So it was all corporately motivated, and they used basically the fact that the African Americans who were brought over from Africa during the slave trade were using cannabis, and they allowed them to use cannabis because it kept them calm, as it does for everybody. Makes people enjoy their life when they might not otherwise. But then after the slave trade ended, they knew that the African Americans were using cannabis, and used Prohibition to, make arrests and to incarcerate. And for the last 40 or 50 years, they've been filling up prisons with simple possession of cannabis, and mostly racially motivated and colored people are being arrested for this sort of thing. White people have no issues whatsoever with cannabis, unless they're at a high level growing operation or something like that. And it's ridiculous. And so anyway, this has been the fight that we've been fighting for decades. Since '98, I've been personally involved. Now, it's all under the bridge now. And, we're all trying to move forward. We're all trying to put the feelings behind us, being on the no-fly list, losing my gold medal, tricking me. Like, literally, I failed the 3 drug tests before I went to Nagano for cannabis, and no one told me. I was ranked in the top 3 in the world before I went to Nagano on the original snowboard tour, but the media wasn't following that because of the fake snowboard tour that the FIS started to bring snowboarding into the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tested positive for cannabis after I won, and they tried to take it away from me when it wasn't even on the list of banned substances in the first place. I'm the only gold medalist, or any medalist from the Olympics, that's been reinstated from losing a medal in the history of the Olympics. And you have to wonder, with their list being the holy grail that it is, what they were thinking. And I could have gone down a different road and decided to not pursue any litigation or anything like that, and to take it, and to embrace it, and to try to be vindicated by my own proactive involvement in cannabis.
Yeah, I think there's that stigma. And it's funny too, with pharmacy, where we're told to take these pills of which we have no idea, or they take, the last 10 seconds of a 30-second commercial telling you all the side effects of these pills that you might take. And these are good for you. These are legal. These are what you're supposed to take, versus what you're saying, and all the benefits and the lack of side effects that ever appear in them. Did you,
That's right.
at that point, did you lose the gold medal at all? Did they take it physically from you, or did you have possession of it?
I had possession of it in my front pocket, but I refused to take it out or look at it in any way. They were supposed to take it from me.
Mhm.
The Canadian Olympic Association and representatives that were with me during that time were instructed to remove the medal from me. But for whatever reason, they didn't have the heart to do it because of the circumstances. They didn't believe that this should have been an issue. Other gold medalists in prior Olympics, and I'm not going to say sports, I know who it is, I know who they are, tested positive for cannabis, and nothing was ever said. Nothing was ever made of it. And everybody, and we didn't know that as snowboarders. And even as snowboarders, we thought weed was on the list of banned substances, and we were trying not to
Mm-hmm.
test positive for it. Like
Yeah.
for 2 years prior to the Olympics, I wasn't smoking weed very much. But then in the spring of '97, I decided, okay, I'm going to
Yep.
completely 100% stop just to meet the criteria, because I knew I'd be going through a bunch of drug tests leading up, which I hadn't by then. And we didn't know at the time in '97 what the length of time the cannabinoids would stay in your system for, which is quite some time actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which it adds to its effectiveness. But as far as an athlete trying to pass a test, it's a little bit trickier. So we didn't really know what the situation was. I didn't know I could test positive for secondhand smoke, for example. And so
Mm-hmm.
even though I wasn't smoking cannabis, I was still going, when my friends got off work, I would
Mm-hmm.
go over
Yeah.
to their house. And that's what we did in Whistler. You go skiing, you go, you have a dinner with friends, and you have some beers and smoke some joints, and then you go home and do it again over and over.
As you
I was
said, you don't wear gas masks, or maybe in the future you would have, but at that time you weren't just, hey guys, just 1 second. I mean, if during
yeah, no,
COVID we would have masks on, but I don't know if they help.
probably not. But it was one of those things where I had a clear conscience about what I was doing.
What you were
Like
doing.
I didn't lose any sleep the night before the Olympics over this. Like I had no idea this was going to be an issue. And when the whole controversy happened, that's when my positive test results for cannabis prior to the Olympics were made public. I didn't even know about it. And they're like, oh, he failed all 3 of his tests for cannabis before he even got to the Olympics.
That wasn't part of it. Ross, I only have a couple of questions for you, and there's a thing in the nagging me. Do you have your gold medal?
Yeah.
Are we able to see it?
Give me like 10 seconds.
No problem. We'll look at your beautiful scenery out your front.
Okay. I'll be right back. It's like -1.
Beautiful. Ross Rebagliati, everyone. His front porch.
Okay.
Oh, that was quicker than I thought.
That was fast, right? You know where I keep this bag? This is my Pro Mix
This
bag.
your stash?
Yeah.
This is the real gold, Ross gold stash.
Okay, before I pull out the medal, I'll show you where I keep it. So this is a timer for a light. Here's some edibles. These are some seeds, some cannabis seeds that were
They
sent
buy
to me.
a Ross gold packet as well that comes with a little gold medal that comes with a
yeah, they get the gold medal.
packet.
I've got trimming scissors here for working on cannabis plants. And then, okay, there's a bunch of other stuff in here too, like grinders.
Yeah.
But this is the little bag. You can see it shining.
You should get a replica gold medal, and then when people buy your packet, they get this whole little setup.
Yeah.
And it's the Ross gold packet.
Yeah, you get your Ross's gold. So I recently did a photo shoot for OVO, for Drake, and they flew me to LA to do it. And when I got to
Hotel Bel Air that they put me up in. Like, it was first class. I don't know if you know OBO, but anyway, the jeweler for OBO and Drake's jeweler in LA came to my hotel and picked up my medal. And overnight, before the photo shoot, they re-golded it.
So that means putting on another layer of gold over top?
Yeah, they put gold on it because it was wearing out from 23 years of people looking at it.
Did you ever bite it, as they do?
Yeah.
You got some bite marks?
Yeah, you see it?
Yeah,
Where is it?
Right there on the top
That's
there.
not it. Let me see if.
Looked like there was a dent.
Yeah, there's a little dent right there. I don't know if you can see it. A little
So,
black mark.
Ross,
Right.
thinking of this with this in your hand and knowing a lot about your story, but obviously it would take almost 50 years to know you completely. Is there any adversity that you have faced in life that, whether adversely or positively, encourages you or discourages you in your work, but to use that adversity to encourage others in their work?
Adversity is unavoidable, and my philosophy in life is because of adversity, and it is that everything happens for a good reason, even if it doesn't seem like it at first. It could take 5 years for you to realize why that car accident happened, or why you lost the gold medal, or whatever happened to you. You will find a reason eventually why that had to happen to you in your life. For example, like I would have met my wife if I hadn't won and lost the Olympics, and this whole thing happened. I never would have. There's so much like destiny involved in adversity. um, we grow from adversity. I mean, that's where everything comes and is born from adversity. And that our society doesn't like that thought, though, because we want to have everything like instantaneously, right? We've got Amazon Prime. I want it now. I want to go to the store now. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. But when you can't go to the store, when you don't even have the money to go to the store, when your truck, like one time my truck was out of gas on the side of the highway in Whistler for like a week because I was broke. And the tow truck driver knew it was my truck and left it there. And I was hoping he wasn't going to leave it there because I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I finally got enough money together to get some gas and walk down the highway and put it in my brand new truck that I couldn't afford. Another big mistake. Super embarrassing. But those are the life's lessons, and you learn how to manage money better. And from going broke, you learn all kinds of things. The value of a dollar. You can't understand that. When I was younger, buying houses and flipping houses, I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time, and spending $10,000-$20,000 on plane tickets to go racing was nothing for me. But I was like 25 years old or 23 years old doing that. And so when you just don't understand like how much someone has to work in 1 hour to earn like $17.
Mm-hmm.
And until you're like I'm going to be 50 years old in July, right? So last year when I was building, I was 48 years old. I was making $17 an hour before taxes. And, I wasn't even clearing $100 a day. And I was busting my back, framing houses. But because I understood the value of what I was doing from being broke in the past over my lifetime and going through the things that I went through, that's not even part of the thought process. It's like you just pick yourself up and you do what you got to do. And that's the bottom line. There's no adversity is the root of success. I've always said that, winning is a losing game. You've got to be a good loser to be a good winner. You're gonna lose 100 times and win one race. Like I would enter in 1 year, I would enter maybe 20 World Cup events and win one. So I'm losing 19 times and I win one time. And that's the way it is in life, and that's business also. You haven't learned anything in business until you've failed at business, until you've bankrupt a company, until you've left shareholders hanging, until you've got employees with contracts that you can't pay, until you fold a company. Unless you've done that, I don't care if you have an MBA or whatever you got out of school, that doesn't mean anything.
As you noticed, we had a little battery technical difficulty, but I mean, you gave us a beautiful view anyway. So what more can we ask? And you seem like you have some of your patio lanterns on now.
Yeah, it's dark here in the last 10 minutes since that happened, and we got the patio lanterns. That's right.
Well, you gave some good encouragement, Ross. How can people get in touch with you? And I have one more shout out because I figured Chris Swartz would be very happy to hear you gave him a shout out, and he'll probably want to go snowboarding with my other friend, Stephen Foot, or Steve Foot. And he
All
loves
right.
snowboarding. So if you can give him a shout out, you might see the two of them out there out west with you one day.
Okay, Steve Foot. Yeah, let's hook up and we'll go cruising around with Chris Schwartz. And I look forward to that. I'm open to meeting people, that's for sure.
How can they reach you with Ross's Gold?
So the best way to contact me at the moment is through my Instagram account at Ross Rebagliati 98, and just DM me. And I get back to everybody that comments on my pictures and who DMs me. I'm also on Facebook, but not as much as I am on Insta. So for now, that's the best way. We'll be going live with our Ross Gold websites in the next few weeks here. So stay tuned for that.
Perfect. One final question, Ross, and you've touched on it a lot, and I really do appreciate your work ethic, but why do you work?
Why do I work? I can't not work. I mean, it's like I have to. Like, why? One of the common things that big CEOs of companies who have started big brands say, like Steve Jobs, for example, is why did you want to do that? And the answer is that I had to. I had no. That's my passion. Like I don't want to work for somebody as much as I want to work for myself, as much as I want to create something that is new. And when you see a brand like Samsung, or a car brand like whatever Ford or Mitsubishi, that doesn't mean that new brands can't emerge, like Tesla, for example. When I look at the biggest nutrients companies in the world, there's a 19-year-old kid every minute of the day learning about nutrients for the first time that doesn't know that Ross Gold Nutrients isn't leading industry stuff and industry leading stuff. So you could have, a huge brand, but you still have to get it out there to the demographic. And so that's my passion.
And that's why you work. Ross
Yeah.
Rebagliati, gold medal winner, and Ross's Gold coming to shelves near you, or contact him for getting some of the nutrients and other supplies that he offers. I've appreciated this time immensely, and I appreciate the work that you do.
Thanks, BrianVee. I appreciate being on your show, and that you thought of me for this segment. So I'd love to come back anytime you got something going on.
Always welcome, Ross. Take care.
Peace, brother.
Hi, it's BrianVee. That was a great conversation with Ross Rebagliati. I appreciate the work that he's doing, and check him out in all the adventures that he's in. As for me, like, share, subscribe, comment, get the notifications, and that will do me some great, wonderful service too. If you'd like to be a guest, contact me, or if you know somebody else that would make a great guest, please contact me at WhyWeWork, BrianVee, @gmail.com. Again, I'm Brian V, and this is Why We Work.